The judge in the retrial of two Al Jazeera journalists has released them on bail. Fahmy and Mohamed will now be freed after 411 days in detention in Cairo. They had been in court on the first day of their retrial, accused of colluding with the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood. They both deny the charges. Their colleague, Australian Peter Grester, was freed and deported on February the 1st. He'd spent 400 days behind bars. Their trial will resume on February the 23rd. Victoria Gatenby reports.
Al Jazeera English's Cairo bureau chief Mohamed Fahmy and producer Mohamed were arrested on December 29, 2013, alongside correspondent Peter Grester. Initially, their detention was believed to be temporary and based on bureaucratic problems with their media accreditation. But within days, Egypt's top prosecutor announced they were being held on terror-related charges, alleging they were aiding the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood. The journalists and Al Jazeera network rejected the charges. So did the global media community. Protesters around the world demonstrated in solidarity with the three men. When the trial finally began in February, the three pleaded not guilty. The proceedings were ridiculed by legal experts around the world. Evidence presented by the prosecution included footage from a different channel, music found on the journalists' laptops, and some of Peter's work in Africa. On June 23rd, the verdict: guilty. Mohamed and Peter were sentenced to 7 years, Baha ordered to spend a decade behind bars. 6 other colleagues from Al Jazeera were sentenced in absentia to 10 years in prison. Criticism of the verdict came from the corridors of power around the world.
The issue of the Al Jazeera journalists in Egypt, we've been clear both publicly and privately that they should be released.
And yet the men had to wait several months before their case was reviewed. Egypt's Court of Cassation found the original trial failed to prove the men had a link to the Muslim Brotherhood or that a terrorist act had even occurred. The court ordered a retrial. The three men had been in jail for more than a year. Meanwhile, a new decree by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi offered new hope for 2 of the men. Grester, an Australian, and Fahmy, a Canadian-Egyptian, were eligible to apply for deportation, a path to freedom not available to Egyptian Mohamed. Diplomatic efforts continued alongside the slow-moving legal process, and on February the 1st, Peter Grester was freed on his 400th day in detention. Met by his relieved family in Brisbane Airport, Grester's unconditional release was tinged with sadness and frustration.
Amidst all of this relief, I still feel a sense of concern, a real sense of worry, because if it's appropriate for me, if it's right for me to be free, then it's right for all of them to be free.
Peter's release raised expectations that Fahmy's freedom was imminent, but as the days dragged on, it became clear that he too would stand alongside Baha in court. Their future once again in the hands of the Egyptian judiciary, but for now they're back at home with their families. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.